The Galaxy Council Citadel was built to intimidate. Every slab of its crystalline walls shimmered with embedded starlight, every balcony was engineered to make visitors feel small, every echo a reminder that this was the seat of civilization. Captain Rhea Vance walked through it like she owned the place. Soft gravity fields folded around her boots as she stepped into the tribunal chamber, an amphitheater big enough to house a destroyer. The air buzzed with low-frequency translation field. Thousands of eyes, compound and otherwise, followed her entrance. She didn't slow, didn't bow, didn't acknowledge the whispers spreading like sparks across dry leaves. Because today wasn't about them. It was about the ZYR Dominion and the single most baffling military mistake in recorded galactic history. The tribunal podium rose from the center of the chamber, a wide platform surrounded by tiers of alien delegations. Holographic recorders floated overhead, projecting swirling amber light. At the highest dais sat the council chair, a translucent arthropod whose body refracted light like moving glass. Its mandibles clicked once. "Proceed," it said. Rhea stepped onto the podium and clasped her hands behind her back. Matte black uniform immaculate, dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense knot. The expression on her face, calm but sharpened. Across from her, on the opposite platform, stood Lord Voralkex, Supreme Marshal of the ZYR Dominion, towering in ceremonial armor, scales rippling a sickly green. His throat sacs pulsed with barely concealed rage and humiliation. Good, Rhea thought. Let him stew. The chair's secondary mandibles twitched. Before we deliberate the consequences of the Dominion's unauthorized incursion into soul space, we invite statements from both parties. Human representative, you may begin. Rhea inhaled once through her nose. Then she said, with perfect neutrality, I have only one question. Her voice carried across the entire chamber, cool, controlled, and cutting as a vibroblade. Did you, she pointed lightly, almost politely, at the ZYR Marshal, invade Earth on purpose? The reaction was instantaneous. Every species that could gasp did. Those that couldn't emitted their own equivalent. Clicking, fluttering, hissing, electromagnetic distortion. 3 delegates fainted. One aquatic observer sloshed entirely out of its gravtank. The Marshal's armored shoulders stiffened. This is mockery. You dare insinuate? No, I'm trying to understand, Rhea replied calmly. Because I've reviewed your logs. I've seen your strategic projections. I've heard your command staff admit, under oath, that they believed Earth possessed minimal resistance potential. She tilted her head. So again, you invaded Earth. Intentionally. A ripple of nervous energy traveled through the chamber like a pressure wave. Rhea placed a small holopad on the railing. With one tap, a hologram flared above her, orange, bright, and massive. Footage of ZYR warships bursting into flame in low orbit. Wounded cruisers spiraling. Detonations chain-reacting across hulls. The Marshal's throat sacs deflated. This imagery is manipulated. Rhea didn't even blink. It's from your own black box recorders. The murmurs intensified. Delegates turned to one another, whispering frantic translations. Many had already heard rumors about what happened on Earth. Contradictory, surreal, impossible rumors. But the official footage? That was new. Rhea zoomed in. The image now showed ZYR infantry formations collapsing under villagers, miners, firefighters, farmers wielding improvised weapons. One particularly infamous clip, a grandmother wielding a cast-iron skillet like a guided missile. The chamber recoiled. Rhea shut the feed off. I'd like the Marshal to clarify, she said. Because from where I'm standing, your military doctrine seems to have miscalculated. The Marshal slammed a clawed fist on his podium, cracking the alloy. Your species fights like wild animals. You ignored surrender protocols. You attacked patrols without announcing your presence. You hid explosives in. In what? Rhea asked. The Marshal seethed. In kitchen appliances. A wave of horrified silence washed over the council. Rhea shrugged. We call it a toaster. The aquatic observer, now half back in its tank, emitted a high-pitched squeal. The chair exhaled a flurry of static like a distress signal. Rhea let the tension stretch. She didn't need to shout. Her voice stayed steady. You invaded a planet you thought was defenseless. You believed humans would roll over. She leaned slightly forward. Instead, your armies were overrun by a population armed with garden tools, sporting equipment, heavy vehicles driven by very angry civilians, and, my personal favorite, an entire marching band that captured a fortified outpost. Savages, the Marshal spat. Your species is uncontrollable. Rhea's smile was thin. So you did invade intentionally. The Marshal hesitated. A fatal pause. Rhea nodded. Good. We're making progress. She turned to the Council, posture immaculate. For the record, humanity did not initiate conflict. We responded to an armed invasion with proportional force. She paused. Very proportional. Proportional, the Marshal roared. Your civilians fought like berserkers. They improvised traps. They coordinated counterattacks without any centralized command. That's called initiative, Rhea said. The chair raised two of its limbs. Enough. The Council acknowledges these surprising variables. Representative Vance, what is the purpose of your question? Rhea looked around the chamber. She made eye contact with dozens of species. Feline, crystalline, feathered, luminous. Then she said, to determine whether this was incompetence, or if the ZYR Dominion simply didn't bother doing research before attacking a death world. Shock detonated across the chamber. Even the Marshal stumbled back. A death? Earth is classified as a mid-tier habitable. By who? Rhea asked. Your analysts? The ones who thought a species raised on constant natural disasters, apex predators, extreme weather cycles, competitive cultures, and hand-to-hand sports would surrender. A feathered ambassador collapsed sideways in its seat. Rhea let her gaze sweep the room. Earth is the reason humans are the way we are. Tough. Adaptable. Hard to kill. So yes, before we proceed with reparations, sanctions, and treaties, I want it confirmed that the Dominion knowingly chose to provoke a planet that produced us. The chamber froze. Even the hologram projectors hummed more quietly. Finally, the chair's crystalline body dimmed in contemplation. Marshal Vuralkex. Is this accurate? The Marshal's throat sacs fluttered in panic. He looked around, the walls, the Council, the recording drones. Cornered. Exposed. And worst of all, embarrassed. Yes, he rasped. We invaded Earth. We believed it would be simple. A long, reverent silence fell over the Council. Rhea nodded once, crisp and decisive. Good. Now we can begin. And in that moment, every delegation in the chamber understood a terrifying truth. Humans didn't survive the invasion. They allowed it, and the galaxy had no idea what it had provoked. The Dominion commander thought Earth would break in a day. His name, General Zethkavrol, still lingering in half-burned reports, had been confident, even bored, during the descent briefing. Rhea had seen the recordings. His cold reptilian eyes, his scaled hands clasped behind his back while he explained to his officers that the invasion of a primitive, pre-FTL species would be a routine subjugation. He had no idea what was waiting for him below the clouds. The first wave of dropships pierced Earth's atmosphere at dawn. Their armored hulls glowed orange against the sky, casting streaks over forests, plains, and quiet rural towns. Their engines screamed as they cut through the troposphere. Rhea watched the footage in the tribunal, quiet and still, as the first impact point appeared on the holographic display. A small agricultural region, fields stretching across the land like a patchwork quilt. The Dominion thought they had chosen a soft target. They were wrong. The dropships slammed into the grasslands with metallic thuds, hydraulic legs stabilizing. Ramp doors hissed open, steam venting. ZYR infantry poured out in rigid formations, armor polished, weapons humming, discipline flawless. Around them, the countryside was calm. Birds sang. Wind rustled through cornfields. A tractor hummed in the distance. General Vroll stepped forth, reptilian gaze assessing the weak environment. All units, he commanded, secure the area. Locate population centers. Expect minimal resistance. Minimal resistance. That phrase would go down in history as the single worst miscalculation of the war. The first human the ZYR encountered was a middle-aged farmer named Daniel Brooks, a man with sunburned skin, tired eyes, and the kind of strength that came from hauling hay bales and repairing machinery since childhood. He rode up on an old quad bike, dust kicking behind him, squinting at the aliens standing in his wheat field. The recording from the ZYR scout's helmet cam was almost comedic. Daniel slowed his quad, looked at the armed soldiers, and said, with a straight face, "What the hell are you doing on my farm?" The translator struggled, stuttering through the rural accent. General Vroll stepped forward. "Primitive human. You are now subject to Dominion authority. Kneel." Daniel blinked. Twice. Then he said, "No." The ZYR soldiers raised their rifles. What happened next became the first viral clip on Earth. Daniel, apparently calm, casually reached behind him, grabbed a heavy wrench, and hurled it with such force that it shattered a ZYR scout's visor and knocked the alien flat. Chaos erupted. Daniel floored the quad bike, ramming it directly into the second soldier. Two more fired, but the farmer swerved, dove off the vehicle, and sprinted back toward his barn, shouting, "Annie! Call the neighbors! We got aliens again!" Again. That part confused the council when they saw it. Earth's rural communities had their own expectations about visitors. Within minutes, more humans arrived, half-dressed, barefoot, carrying whatever they grabbed on their way out. Tools, bats, axes, chains, shovels, crossbows, and in one case, a fencing sword from a teenager's wall display. The ZYR formations collapsed under the onslaught. Helmet cams showed soldiers backing away, slipping in mud, firing wildly as yelling humans charged at them with terrifying commitment. Smoke, shouts, curses, and fury filled the air. The Dominion's first casualty report came 30 minutes later. Unit Alpha 1 overwhelmed by hostile civilian population. Requesting heavy reinforcements. General Vroll could not comprehend it. "These are untrained primitives," he hissed into his comm, "maintain formation." But humans didn't fight in formations. They improvised. By mid-morning, word of the invasion had spread across the county. People didn't hide. They gathered. And they planned. From rooftop vantage points to grain silos transformed into lookout towers, humans used everything around them. A group of welders armored a pickup truck using scrap metal plates. A mechanic converted a hydraulic loader into a battering ram. Hunters coordinated ambush tactics over local radio frequencies. General Vroll's troops were bewildered. "This level of aggression is illogical," one officer reported. "Civilians should be fleeing. Humans are attempting to capture our soldiers alive," another whispered. Vroll sneered. "Impossible. No pre-FTL species would dare." A young ZYR pilot sprinted into frame. "Sir, a group of human youths have commandeered one of our scout vehicles." "Impossible," Vroll repeated. But helmet footage didn't lie. 6 teenagers were joyriding, literally joyriding, in a stolen Dominion hover scout, laughing, screaming, and occasionally firing its mounted plasma cannon into empty field just to see what it did. The council chamber had fallen into horrified silence watching this. Rhea, of course, knew exactly what those teenagers were like. Resilient, she explained gently, and easily excited. By noon, the invasion had gone from routine subjugation to complete operational failure. The Dominion attempted to regroup near a rural highway, establishing a perimeter with automated turret drones. It lasted 12 minutes. A convoy of human emergency responders, firefighters, paramedics, and off-duty cops, stormed the position using a fire truck as a battering ram. Someone blasted heavy metal music through the truck's external speakers at full volume. The aliens scattered. Firefighters armed with axes and oxygen tanks charged directly into turret fire, completely ignoring the incoming plasma rounds. A paramedic tackled a ZYR officer with the kind of reckless bravery only someone who'd worked decades of city trauma could muster. One firefighter, helmet cam shaking, was heard yelling, "You picked the wrong planet!" And the rest shouted back in unison. The first Dominion retreat order came at 1342 local time. General Vroll's voice was raw with disbelief. "Fall back to landing zone. We will regroup and launch a counteroffensive." His troops didn't reach the landing zone. They were cut off by a group of local veterans, hunters, mechanics, and, most famously, the Ridgewood High School marching band, which had seen the alien incursion on social media and deployed immediately. Armed with brass instruments, percussion equipment, and the sheer willpower of bored adolescents, they overran a defensive checkpoint. The band director was later quoted, "Well, they blocked the road. So the kids just went through them." The ZYR soldiers fled. Some were captured. Some threw down weapons. Some curled into defensive positions while sousaphones blared over their helmet. The Dominion formally declared the first wave invasion catastrophically compromised. On a rural planet. By civilians. With no military jurisdiction. Back in the tribunal chamber, Lord Voralkex kept his eyes fixed downward as the footage ended. Rhea stood with her hands clasped behind her back. "This," she said quietly, "was your easy conquest. This was the subjugation you promised your Dominion." The Marshal didn't speak. Rhea continued. "This wasn't humanity mobilizing. This wasn't our military. This wasn't our fleets." She gestured toward the burning holograms. "This was a rural county on one continent. A tiny fraction of Earth. A handful of civilians." The council shivered collectively. "And you still lost." Rhea let the weight of that truth settle like stone. Then she delivered the final line. "And this was only the first day. The Dominion had underestimated humans once, twice. Now their entire campaign was unraveling, and General Vroll could feel it. Every report screamed the same message. Humans adapted faster than doctrine allowed, coordinated better than algorithms predicted, and, most terrifyingly, refused to die quietly. By the third day, Earth had transformed from primitive planet to a battlefield of improvisation and ferocity. Small towns became strongholds. Farms turned into layered defenses. Neighborhoods developed communication grids that mimicked military operations, and humans weren't trained to think like soldiers. They thought like humans, cunning, relentless, and unafraid of chaos. The Dominion's orbital fleet launched orbital strikes on industrial cities, confident that laser bombardments would break civilian morale. Instead, entire neighborhoods vanished beneath coordinated countermeasures. Hacked drones intercepted missiles, fire brigades flooded streets to absorb plasma blasts, and human engineers improvised electromagnetic shields from shipping containers and steel beams. In one urban district, a ZYR dropship descended into a parking lot expecting compliance. Children had stringed steel cables between high-rises. Street vendors had rigged Molotov-like devices with fire retardant and explosives. The dropship was snagged mid-descent, swinging like a pendulum, before plummeting sideways into a fountain. The only casualties were ZYR soldiers, disoriented and enraged. In the tribunal chamber, Rhea paused the hologram. She looked at the council delegates, letting the full magnitude sink in. "These humans," she said, "aren't just survivors. They are innovators. They turn everything at their disposal into a weapon. And they do it together. There's no chain of command. There's no hesitation. And there's no surrender." Delegates muttered, translating words into their own languages. A crystalline ambassador tilted slightly in shock. Back on the ground, the Dominion had decided to escalate. A battalion of armored mechs was deployed to crush a city district that humans had fortified with barricades of trucks, shipping containers, and repurposed construction machinery. The mechs fired. Streets erupted in explosions. Windows shattered. Concrete cracked. But humans didn't run, they counterattacked. A former park ranger led a squad of teenagers armed with homemade flamethrowers crafted from garden sprayers and aerosol cans. Retired firefighters used pressurized hoses to short-circuit mech circuit. And then, improbably, a group of civilian engineers hacked into the Dominion mech's navigation sensors using a salvaged handheld console. One by one, the mechs faltered, jerking like puppets cut from strings. When the Dominion soldiers tried to retreat, they were met by citizens armed with anything from baseball bats to metal pipe. Several dropped their weapons in disbelief and surrendered. General Vroll's orders grew frantic. Pull back. Regroup. Focus fire on command nodes. But humans had already adapted to those tactics. The Council's tribunal footage showed civilians coordinating in real time. Streets became mazes. Buildings were fortified like bunkers. And somewhere in the chaos, volunteers in hoodies and work boots launched an impromptu drone swarm that disabled Dominion communications in the city. Vroll bellowed into his comm, "Impossible. These are non-combatants. How are they coordinating?" Rhea's voice cut across the holograms in the tribunal, calm and deadly precise. "They're not soldiers. They don't have to obey doctrine. They improvise. They communicate. They endure. And every time you think you've contained them, they've already moved to the next position, learned from your attack, and struck back harder." The turning point came on day 5. Dominion intelligence had finally mapped the main human command network, or so they thought. What they found instead was a decentralized swarm of resistance hubs. Engineers had created redundant networks using old satellites, ham radios, and even courier pigeons. Civilians had taken over abandoned industrial sites, turning them into factories to produce makeshift weapons and defenses. A squadron of Dominion strike fighters attempted to annihilate one hub, only to encounter a coordinated ambush. Traffic barricades rerouted streets into kill zones, automated vehicles rammed attackers off course, and snipers armed with compound bows and modified rifles eliminated pilot after pilot. One pilot, captured in helmet cam footage, screamed into the comms, "These are civilians! They are civilians!" But in the background, another human calmly dismantled a drone with a crowbar. By the time the Dominion realized the extent of Earth's resistance, the humans weren't just defending, they were attacking. Supply lines were cut. Fuel depots were sabotaged. Drop points were rigged with explosives and decoys. Entire fleets were stranded mid-orbit when humans hacked the relay systems controlling docking clamps and orbital hangars. Vroll's voice grew hoarse as he shouted into the tribunal-recorded footage, "This is impossible! They cannot sustain this. Every engagement should favor us." Rhea's commentary was dry, measured, and lethal in its implication. "They are not just sustaining it. They are learning faster than you can calculate. You invaded a planet expecting obedience. You found a species that thrives on adversity, and they fight better when cornered." Council delegates, many of whom had fought interstellar wars themselves, were pale. Some refused to look at the screen. A few quietly adjusted their seats, as if distancing themselves from the concept of human warfare. Rhea let the room absorb it. "The Dominion underestimated Earth's inhabitants at every turn," she said. "You assumed we would break. We did not. You assumed we could be predicted. We cannot. You assumed victory was inevitable. It was never a possibility." She paused, letting the tribunal's silence reach its full weight. By the end of the first week, Dominion forces were retreating in disarray. Entire battalions surrendered voluntarily. Others hid in abandoned towns. Command chains collapsed. Ships were abandoned in orbit. And this, she gestured toward the now flickering holograms of orbital fire and battlefield chaos, is only the beginning of humanity's response to your arrogance. Even the Marshal couldn't hide his dread. His tail lashed in agitation. "This cannot be." "No," Rhea replied, voice like steel, "it can. And it is." The council remained frozen, staring at the footage, the numbers, the testimony. For the first time in living memory, every alien present understood the same truth. Humans were not to be trifled with. And in the back of Rhea Vance's mind, she already knew the final lesson the Dominion would learn. Earth did not need to conquer to demonstrate superiority. It had already proven itself. The council chamber smelled faintly of ozone from the hovering recorders, though no one admitted it. Every delegate, no matter how alien, sat forward, unmoving, as the tribunal resumed. The holographic displays flickered with images of Earth's ruined battlefields, not ruin in the human sense, but in the Dominion's. Overturned mechs, scorched dropships, abandoned warships, and ZWR soldiers kneeling before civilians with nowhere to run. Rhea Vance stood at the podium, gloved hands clasped behind her back, posture immaculate. She didn't need theatrics. The evidence spoke for itself. "All right," she said, voice crisp, measured, and lethal in its subtle authority. "Let's address the question the Council is dying to ask. How did a pre-FTL species completely dismantle one of the galaxy's most formidable military powers?" The chair's translucent mandibles clicked once. "Proceed, Representative Vance." Rhea gestured to the first hologram. A Dominion command center in chaos, ZWire officers scrambling as humans coordinated attacks from 3 separate directions simultaneously. "First," she said, "we didn't fight like you expected. We didn't fight like your simulations predicted. Humans improvise, adapt, and endure. Your analysts assumed a rigid battlefield doctrine. That is your mistake." A crystalline delegate's surface shimmered nervously. "But these civilians?" it asked. "They shouldn't have been capable of such organized resistance." Rhea let a faint smile curve her lips. "They're not civilians in the sense you think. Every human is trained in basic survival, cooperation, and problem-solving. From childhood, we are conditioned to work together, think ahead, and handle extreme adversity. You treated us as a primitive species, but the truth is, Earth cultivates resilience." The Marshal, still kneeling on his platform in humiliation, hissed, "You glorify mere luck and chaos." Rhea shook her head. "Not luck. Calculation. Experience. Observation. Determination. You relied on statistics, simulations, and obedience. Humans rely on willpower, ingenuity, and a singular refusal to be defeated. Your entire invasion failed because you couldn't predict it, and you couldn't adapt fast enough." She tapped a second hologram. Civilians repurposing industrial machinery into siege weapons, school buses converted into armored transports, and entire neighborhoods creating improvised electronic countermeasures to Dominion drones. "This," she said, voice firm, "was not exceptional. It was routine. You underestimated an entire species. That is why your fleets burned, your soldiers surrendered, and your strategy collapsed." Several delegates whispered to each other, translating in disbelief. "And there's more," Rhea continued. "Even after Dominion forces were retreating, humans pursued them. Not because of vengeance, although that is part of it. Not because of politics, though we have plenty. We pursued them because our species refuses to allow injustice to stand unchallenged. Every effort you made to suppress us, through fear, force, or intimidation, was met with resistance that grew stronger the further you pushed." The chair's mandibles clicked nervously. "Representative, this level of human coordination defies prior galactic assessments." "Exactly," Rhea said. "You thought Earth would be a soft target. You thought conquest would be easy. You thought humans would bend to your will. And you were wrong. Every assumption you made, every calculation you trusted, every statistic you believed, was flawed because it didn't account for the unpredictable factor: humanity itself." The Marshal growled, claws tapping the podium. "You are attempting to rewrite history. You make it sound miraculous." Rhea stepped closer. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shout. But the stillness in her tone carried the weight of inevitability. "Not miraculous. Natural," she said. "This is what humans do. We survive. We fight back. We adapt. You cannot erase that with fleets, bombs, or intimidation. You can only acknowledge it, and hope you never test it again. A hologram of Dominion ships drifting aimlessly in orbit appeared, their crew abandoning the bridge. Another showed humans marching through towns, offering aid, repairing infrastructure, salvaging weapons, and ensuring no innocents were left behind. Even in war, Rhea said softly, humanity maintains its principles. We fight ruthlessly when necessary, but we also protect. We organize. We innovate. That combination? You are unprepared for it. You cannot simulate it. You cannot anticipate it. You cannot stop it. And it will only get stronger every time it is challenged. The chamber was silent. Every delegate understood, with a cold clarity, that this was more than a war story. This was a warning. Now, Rhea continued, let us talk consequences. Dominion forces will withdraw from Earth-controlled space immediately. Reparations will be negotiated under human terms. Territory lost to the invasion will be returned. Commanders responsible for unprovoked attacks will be extradited to human tribunals. And most importantly, she paused, letting the weight of the next words settle. Any species that considers attacking Earth again will face the same outcome. Do not mistake our restraint for weakness. This was not our full capability. This was not even our military in full force. This was only a fraction of what humans are capable of when defending our own. A murmur ran through the chamber. Even the council chair, ancient and calculating, leaned forward, absorbing the full implication. The marshal hissed through clenched teeth. You cannot threaten the council in this manner. Rhea's gaze didn't waver. I am not threatening the council. I am informing it. You invaded Earth on purpose. You learn the hard way what that entails. Any future aggression against humanity will be met with results that will surprise even the most seasoned strategists in this room. Her words were not loud. They didn't need to be. Every delegate felt the sting of them. And now, she added, voice calm but sharp, we proceed to restore order. We will ensure that the galaxy understands what happens when one species attempts to impose its will on another without consideration and without respect. The marshal's head drooped. The humiliation was complete. His forces were shattered. His campaign was a disaster. And the council, for the first time, understood the scale of the human threat in a way that no simulation or report could convey. Rhea stepped back, letting the holograms fade. Every eye in the room was on her. Some delegates avoided direct contact. Others stared, wide-eyed. One or two species, long accustomed to commanding armies across star systems, looked genuinely terrified. The message was clear. Earth had survived. Earth had defended itself. And the galaxy would never forget the lesson. Rhea Vance's voice, calm and steady, concluded. If you invade a planet without understanding its people, be prepared to face the consequences. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. Humanity adapts. And humanity wins. The tribunal silence that followed was absolute. No one dared speak. Even the ancient chair seemed to shimmer uneasily, refracting starlight like a warning. And somewhere deep in the human psyche, a quiet thought echoed across the stars. The galaxy had just learned the hard way that Earth was not to be trifled with. The chamber was silent for minutes after Rhea's final statement. Not a whisper, not a click, not a flicker from the hovering recorders. Even the ambient hum of the Citadel's power cores seemed to pause. The galaxy's most powerful leaders were staring at a single human woman as if she had split the universe in two. Rhea Vance did not move. She stood at the podium, gloved hands clasped behind her back, calm, composed, and perfectly aware of the weight of every eye upon her. Finally, the council chair, the ancient, translucent arthropod, spoke, its mandibles clicking in slow, deliberate rhythm. Representative Vance, your presentation, your testimony, it is unprecedented. The Council has never encountered a species capable of repelling a full-scale invasion while sustaining societal cohesion and civilian autonomy simultaneously. Thank you, Rhea said evenly. No smile. just truth. The Marshal of the ZYR Dominion twitched, scales glinting nervously under the chamber lights. His once imposing armor looked ridiculous in the shadows of utter failure. The chair continued. The Council must deliberate on appropriate reparations, punitive measures against the invading forces, and long-term diplomatic protocols. Rhea raised a single hand, palm open, signaling pause. With all due respect, Council Chair, there is no need for long deliberations. The facts are self-evident. The Dominion underestimated Earth. They invaded intentionally. Their military might was decimated by ordinary humans, civilians acting in defense of their planet. Any further analysis would be redundant. A murmur swept through the delegates. Some gasped, others whispered frantic translations to their neighbors. The Marshal spat, voice quivering. You speak as though this is a victory of the species, not the planet. That is absurd. One planet cannot. Rhea interrupted, tone calm but lethal. One planet? You invaded the wrong one. This is not about territory. This is not about conquest. This is about the capability of a species when challenged. Humans are not bound by your simulations. We are not confined by your strategies. We fight, we adapt, and we endure. And we will win, every time the threat is underestimated. The chair's limbs clicked faster. This is unsettling. Rhea leaned slightly forward, gaze sweeping the chamber. Let me be clear, humanity does not seek conquest. We do not initiate wars. But if anyone, any species, thinks Earth is an easy target, thinks they can challenge humans without consequence, they will learn exactly what it means to face a species that thrives on adversity. Another murmur. Some delegates shifted uneasily. And the Dominion? The chair asked, voice trembling slightly. They will withdraw. Reparations will be paid. Commanders responsible for unprovoked attacks will be held accountable under human jurisdiction. And, Rhea added, letting her voice drop just enough to convey a subtle menace, any further attempts at aggression will be met with results far exceeding your worst nightmares. Humanity's restraint this time was a courtesy. Do not expect another. The Marshal hissed, claws gripping the podium. You cannot threaten the galaxy in this manner. Rhea's eyes narrowed, a quiet storm of calm fury and deadly precision. I am not threatening the galaxy, she said. I am informing it. We survived your war. We defended our planet. And we proved that Earth is not to be trifled with. That is all. The chamber fell silent again, heavier this time. Even the ancient chair's translucent form seemed to shimmer uneasily, refracting starlight into fractured patterns of alarm. Delegates from countless species whispered amongst themselves. Some visibly recoiled. Others avoided direct eye contact, suddenly reconsidering centuries of assumptions about humanity. The entire council understood the same unspoken truth. Humans were not just another species. Humans were a force unlike any other in the galaxy. Rhea turned back to the Marshal. Her voice softened, but not enough to lose its edge. Remember this, Lord Voralkex. If humanity ever wanted to conquer the galaxy, we wouldn't start with diplomacy. And we wouldn't allow anyone to underestimate us again. The Marshal's tail lashed, but he said nothing. Humiliation, fear, and defeat weighed too heavily on him. The chair finally spoke, mandibles trembling in unison. Very well. The Council acknowledges Earth's victory. The Dominion's withdrawal shall be immediate. Reparations will be processed. And the galaxy will take note of humanity's capacity. Rhea nodded once, crisp and decisive. Good. Let's ensure history records it accurately. Then, without ceremony, she turned and walked off the podium. Every step measured, deliberate, unwavering. Her presence radiated authority, competence, and the quiet but unmistakable threat that Earth could and would defend itself with unimaginable effectiveness if ever provoked again. Delegates whispered as she passed, translating fragments of what they had seen. The Marshal slumped in defeat. Holographic projectors recorded every moment. The chamber, built to impress and intimidate, now felt fragile, small, and powerless before a single human. As Rhea exited, one young delegate, a feathered envoy from a warlike system, murmured to its companion, "They fought like gods among mortals." The companion tilted its head. "No, they fought like humans." Outside the chamber, the stars shone indifferently. But somewhere across the galaxy, the lesson spread: never underestimate Earth. Never underestimate humanity. And deep in the corridors of human command, Rhea allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The galaxy had finally learned what it meant to provoke humans, and what it meant to face the consequences. Because for humanity, survival was never enough. Victory was inevitable, and the galaxy would never forget it,